What's going on, Facebook? What's up, YouTubes? We're back. We're getting in full swing for college football. Billy, football season's going to be here before you know it.
Oh man, we less than 100 days away, man. It's I'm getting so anxious where I'm so excited and I can't wait for it to happen too, man.
Now, when you were a player, were you this anxious for season to start, or were you kind of dreading the hot summer practices?
Man, I used to dread the summer practices. I mean, game time is what you always want to see. But, as a player, it seems like it takes forever for that to come. And now that I'm not a player anymore, it comes so fast. I'm like, gosh, the season was just over and it's already started again. So, yes, it's the guys are like dreading practice right now. They're ready for the games.
Yeah. Well, Billy, on our last couple of videos, I don't know if we did it on our last one, but we're starting to announce some winners for our Hound Dogs gift certificate drawings, and I'm going to go ahead and announce that. And before I do, now, Facebook, if you're watching on Facebook, you increase your chances of winning if you go ahead and subscribe and hit that bell notification over on YouTube. That's just Volunteer Roadshow. Search us up over there, and if you're watching this on YouTube, same goes for you guys. Look up our page, Volunteer Roadshow, on Facebook, and I'll be announcing some winners. And the Facebook winner, Billy, is Dustin Graham. Email me your contact information to volunteerroadshow@gmail.com, and I'll get that out to you. And our YouTube winner is H. Henry. So hit me up on email. That's volunteerroadshow@gmail.com. But Billy, your son just graduated college. He played college football, and you were telling us on the last show that he's wanting a job. Well, I've got a job for him. He needs to get into coaching. Let me tell you something. I've been reading this contract with Dabo Swinney. Did you hear about that?
Oh my God, man! I think the whole world heard about that contract, man. It's $93 million, $9 million a year. Oh my God, man. I think I need to get back into coaching myself. I got out of it thinking, oh man, this is not going to do it. But now, oh man, I'll take that salary.
Oh yeah, me too. And you just hire me to be your chauffeur. I can handle that. Well, let me ask you a question. That puts Dabo Swinney up there at what, $9.3 million? I believe that's the same as Nick Saban. Do you think that Dabo is worth as much as Nick Saban as a coach?
Well, I personally do, man. It's all about the market value now. They're taking these contracts to the extreme, where it's basically NFL money now when it comes to college coaching. It's something that I've always been like, okay, you paying these guys all this money, but come on, you got to be able to give a little bit to the little guys too. Because they always talk about, the college rank is amateur, but they're paying their college coaches as professionals now. And I've always been, if you're going to pay those guys that kind of money, you need to pay everybody that kind of money.
Including the players?
Now, that's a whole nother topic there.
Well, I don't know how I feel about it. I don't know if he's worth as much as Nick Saban is. I think I read Nick's getting 8.75, and I think Nick, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, Couch Coach, he's getting 8.75 plus some other compensations, and I think it brought him up to 9.3. What do you think about Dabo getting that kind of money?
I think it's about keeping Dabo from going to Alabama. And, basically everything in his contract is pretty well set up for him, other than if he goes to Alabama, I think he would owe upwards to 50% of that, salary back or whatever over a course of the time. So I think Clemson is definitely committed to keeping him there. And on Dabo's end, I don't understand why he would go to Alabama. There's a lot of people who will come back to me and say, well, that's, you're going home to mama, all these other kind of things. Alabama is a blue blood job. I get it. But, the bottom line is Dabo could win 9 or 10 games from here on out, never win another title. And not only is he set for life, but Clemson fans aren't going to cook him and eat him as long as he's continuing to throttle South Carolina, right? I mean, he could literally go 9-4, 10-3 from here on out, and it would be fine. If he went to Alabama, he could be there for 4 years, win 1 national championship, and that's massive underachievement following a guy like Nick. So I think from Clemson's end, I think it's commitment to keeping him there and making him a lifer, and it's going to make it a tougher choice for Dabo to want to leave is what I think.
Well, Billy, that makes a lot of sense. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, it makes perfect sense, you know. It makes perfect sense. That's the beauty of the beast, you know. You make that kind of money when you're winning, and nowadays, I mean, they're making that kind of money when they're losing. But, you know, you're talking about 2 coaches that have done great at these programs. You know, Clemson, you know, they haven't always been that way. And when Dabo came into the picture, this is a winning coach. And you want to pay that type of coach so he don't go anywhere else. You know, you want to have that coach that's going to be the legend of your team or go down in history as one of the best coaches that you ever had at your university. And that's what Dabo has done, you know, and it shows, you know, as the kids are coming to his school with the recruiting, you know, top 10 every year. You know, he's getting up there where Alabama is now, where he's created a dynasty now. So, yes, I think it's right.
Well, we're going to bring on a special guest. Everybody that's been watching the Volunteer Roadshow for any amount of time knows this gentleman, Pigskin Peete. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, listen, I'm amazing and fantastic. And any day that I get to sit around and talk college football with not only college football fans, but an ex-college football player of the highest order is a great day for me. So thank you.
Well, we're glad you came on the show. What do you think about this? Do you think Dabo Swinney is really worth as much or more than Nick Saban, the great Nick Saban that's won I don't know how many national championships?
Well, I was listening to these 2 guys talk, and I agree with a couple things they said, and I disagree with a couple other things. As far as is he worth it, well, Billy Ratliff said it best himself. It's what the market's willing to pay you, right? It's what is he worth to the university? So since Dabo Swinney's got there, the attendance at Clemson has skyrocketed, the tuition has skyrocketed, the regulations for getting into the school, both as a student and as a football player, has skyrocketed. So the University of Clemson is banking on the football program in general. So, yes, he's worth every penny they're paying and probably more. Now, as far as being the highest paid player, listen, what was it, last year or the year that Jimbo Fisher signed the 10-year, $80 million contract with Texas A&M, he became the highest paid player. And probably the year before that there was another highest paid coach. And probably next year there'll be a new contract that comes out where somebody else will be the highest paid coach. So this is just a progression of the amount of money that's being changed from hand to hand in the college football world. I mean, the college football is, in a way, becoming professional sports, especially on the coaching level, because of the amount of money that they're making. Now, I don't know if Billy Ratliff knows this, because he did mention, you know, spreading some of that wealth around to the little guys. But in Dabo Swinney's first contract negotiation after his original contract, when they went to extend his first contract, which I believe was around maybe 2011, if I'm not mistaken, haven't looked it up, but they offered him, I want to say, $4.5 or $5 million a year, and he said no. Take $1.5 million off that, and let's go out and get us some elite assistant coaches, so we can get on a level where we can be winning. So he gave up $1.5 million of his own money in order to go out and get Chad Morris and to eventually go out and get a Brent Venables so that they could get in the position where they are now. So I'm not naive enough to say that Dabo Swinney doesn't care about money, because of course he does. I mean, listen, he does. But I don't think that's all he values. So whether it's $8 million or $9 million or $7 million, I don't think that's his motivation. I think his motivation comes in the winning and just being a part of something special.
Let me ask you a question, Billy. You watching it as a former player, what do you see as the differences in coaching style and managerial style between Nick Saban and Dabo Swinney?
Well, I mean, to me, it's pretty much the same thing. You know, these guys are what I've always said all kids need is what I call a player's coach. You know, these coaches here, they adapt to any kid situation, whether it's country, rap, I don't care, rock and roll or whatever. They're going to your home and dance with you, as you saw a couple of videos Nick Saban back in the day, doing the cha-cha slide with the family and stuff. I mean, he's these coaches that like to have fun with these kids, and when the kids see these type of things that they're just like you, they're going to want to come to you. And both these coaches' style is the exact same way. They're very tough on the kids when practice, and the kids, you know, they love that. You know, even though they don't like it in practice, but when it pays off in the long run in the game and the transition the way they do, it always come back and it's the exact same thing, the exact same results, wins. And these kids, they buy into everything these coaches are saying. And it shows the results on the field. So both of these coaches are exactly the same coaches. I say if Dabo went to Alabama, you'll see the exact same results.
All right, Couch Coach, I'm gonna ask you a loaded question.
Yeah.
If they fired Kirby Smart, who would you rather have, Nick Saban or Dabo Swinney as your next head coach at Georgia?
Come on, that's easy, Couch Coach. Don't mess this up.
No, it is easy because I would take Dabo there because Dabo has the organizational development piece of what you're talking about. You know, I mean, when you're talking about Nick and Dabo, you know, it's a completely different setup. I mean, you know, Dabo had to grow into being a head coach, you know, and I think what he understands is that he's not an X's and O's genius, but he's a great recruiter. He is a master talent evaluator, and he puts his great X's and O's coaches in place to be successful. And, you know, you have a guy like Nick, who Nick really is an X's and O's genius. I mean, at every place he's gone, even at, you know, players who didn't like him, they said, like, his defense wins. I mean, he knows his stuff when it comes to defense. Now, you're not going to enjoy working under Nick for 3 years unless you're sadomasochistic like Kirby Smart is. You know, so he's going to have a lot of turnover at his staff, but you know, you also gain a lot by having that on your resume of working under Nick Saban, and you can't help but be a better, you know, coach long term because of that. So, you know, no, Nick is not going to be the kind of coach that players are going to look back on and say, oh, I loved every single minute of playing under Nick, but, you know, they like the winning. They like what they learned from him. So, you know, what's the right answer? Well, you got to find out what works best for you as a coach, but just in terms of longevity and in terms of fit, which is another piece you got to look at. I think Dabo would be a much better fit with the Georgia people than that kind of no-nonsense Midwestern or, you know, West Virginia kind of thing that Nick has, where it's like, you know, I'm going to be very brusque with the media, and, you know, that just doesn't go over very well in a place like Georgia. So I would say Dabo Swinney for sure.
I got to respond to that.
Go ahead.
All right. So, first of all, I agree with him. I think he picked the right guy. And I was going to pick him for a different reason. The reason I would pick Dabo over Saban at this point is because he's younger. I mean, that's the bottom line. He's 20 years younger than Saban. Now, if you're going to say they're the same age, you know, in a dream world, then you can split hairs there. And as far as what he said about Dabo not being an X's and O's genius, this is something I hear from a lot of people. Dabo Swinney is the main play caller on offense for Clemson, always has been. So he has dual offensive coordinators that send him down plays to the sideline, you know, what their suggestions would be, but he makes the final play call. So I don't know what this narrative came out that Dabo Swinney is not a play caller or not an offensive genius. Now, when it comes to the defense, he puts that in the hands of the real expert, you know, in his defensive coordinator. But as far as offense goes, Dabo Swinney is the play caller, so I don't know how you can't give him credit for that. I don't know where that narrative came from.
Let me ask you a question.
I would say that
Pigskin. Go ahead, Couch Coach. Go ahead.
Let me respond to that. I would say that Dabo is not a Steve Spurrier in that Steve Spurrier could go out there and have 40 years experience and beat you with his brain with an X's and O's standpoint. Now, I mean, I think Dabo, yes, like offensive might be his expertise, but I mean, I think the beauty of having a guy like Dabo is, again, he understands kind of the organizational development piece. You know, he's not he doesn't care who gets the credit or whatnot. I think he has more of a new school approach, and I think that's a formula that has worked very well for Clemson. But yeah, I mean, you might be right. I mean, you know your team better than me, but I would say that, he would be the guy that I would go with if I had to choose between the two again in the dream world.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And here, I'll just leave it with this. So here's just an example of what I'm trying to say, is that so after Chad Morris was hired and the offense exploded under Taj Boyd and Sammy Watkins and Nuke Hopkins and all those guys, but when Chad Morris left, he was only there for a few years. He left, and of course, everybody said, "Oh, now Chad Morris, the offensive genius has gone out of Clemson. The offense is going to take a step back." Well, they just got better, and that's because it doesn't matter who the offensive coordinator is at Clemson, because he is the offensive coordinator at Clemson. So that's my point.
All right, you mentioned something, Pigskin, about Chad Morris leaving. He's now a head coach at Arkansas. Do you think Brent Venables will ever get a head coaching job, or do you think he's happy where he's at?
Yeah, I do think that Venables would definitely eventually get a head coaching job. I don't see it happening more than likely within the next 3 or 4 years, mainly because of his son. Two sons, but his current son, Jake Venables, is an underclassman at Clemson, and he has another younger son, I believe, is committed. So that sits in there just conservatively for another 3 or 4 years. I don't see him leaving as long as his sons are playing there. I mean, that's possible, but probably not very likely. Plus, he just got an extension. But he did make a statement whenever he left Oklahoma, and this is something that goes unnoticed. But he left Oklahoma, and he was berated by the media. Why would you leave Oklahoma to go somewhere like Clemson? Does that make any sense at all? And he said, well, I believe that, he said, and this is his words, and I quote, "I eventually want to be a head coach one day, and I believe that going to Clemson is the best path for me to do that." But that was before the success that Clemson had. And, who could have seen that coming, including him? So I believe he's happy where he is right now, but it's only a matter of time, I believe, before he gets a head coaching job. And, it's just we'll see where he ends up. I don't think he'll take any job. I don't think he'll go to, let's say, a Georgia Tech or, a Syracuse or somewhere like that. I think if he's going to leave Clemson, he's going to hold out for a big-time job somewhere.
Well, I think he'll end up coaching too, but he's getting, $2 million a year as a coordinator there at Clemson?
Yeah, he's over $2.5 million.
Wow. Can you believe that, Billy?
Oh my, that's a lot of money, and I think I'll be comfortable with making that being a coordinator as well. You don't get as much heat when you're not the head coach. So,
well, you do realize your head coach, Phillip Fulmer, got about that as a head coach back in the 90s. Man, have things changed.
It changed.
Wow.
Big time.
All right, before we wrap this thing up, Billy, I'm going to ask you all a question. Do you think Dabo Swinney will be the head coach eventually sometime in the future at Alabama?
I don't think he will leave Clemson. I think Dabo will retire at Clemson. I think they will continue to give him that pay raise every year to keep him there, especially if he's winning the way he's winning right now. It's pointless for him to go to Alabama right now and try to create something that's already there, because right now the next statue that's going to be built there will be Nick Saban. And I don't think that Dabo needs to go down there and try to fill Nick Saban's shoes. Even if they did give him $1 million more per year, I don't think it would be the same treatment that Nick Saban gets right now, and vice versa if Nick Saban was to go to Clemson. So, no, I don't think Dabo would leave for Alabama.
I don't know if he will or not, but I do know one thing. He will not be the coach right after Nick Saban. I wouldn't want to be that coach. But what do you think, Couch Coach?
Yeah, I agree with that assessment. I think that he would have to be the second in line. I mean, if I was going to pick someone, like if Nick retired in the next 2 or 3 years, and if this guy stuck around, I could see a guy like a Steve Sarkisian being there, because I just don't know of anyone who would want to come in right after Nick, right? But, I'm looking at it, too, from a fit standpoint, too, and I just think Dabo's kind of created this culture of, he has kind of this Christian upbringing thing kind of going on. He's got this fun-loving culture, and to try to bring that in and kind of switch gears. I think you could do that at Alabama, but man, they're just so used to just being a machine and being businesslike and wanting to win and just stack titles. And like I said before, I mean, Dabo could be there for 4 years, win one national title in that 4-year period, and that would be gross underachievement from what they've had the last 10 years. So I think it's some of it too is just a culture fit. So if he did come in there, I think it would be 2 or 3 years later after Nick retired, because I honestly don't see how anyone could follow in Nick's shoes right after what he's done.
Well, Couch Coach, you just made every Alabama fan's head explode when you said Steve Sarkisian as the next head coach. All right, we're going to wrap this up. We're going to wrap this up with Pigskin Pete. Be honest. Do you think Dabo Swinney will ever be the head coach at Alabama?
All right, everybody, hold on to your shorts and get ready for this, because you're not going to be ready for what I'm about to say. All right, everybody ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think he will. But hey, let me add a caveat to that. I think it's going to be more of a Mac Brown situation. In other words, I don't think he's going there in the next 20 years. I think it'll be a situation where Dabo Swinney retires at Clemson, maybe at late 50s, early 60s, sits out for a couple of years, and comes back to Alabama, back to his home, his alma mater, back to his home state, for the nostalgia of the whole type of thing. But yeah, both these guys are right. What benefit does Dabo Swinney have to replace Nick Saban as soon as Nick Saban hangs it up? There's no benefit there. And here's the reality. I'll put it the way that Dabo Swinney put it, because he gets asked about this probably on a weekly basis throughout the year, is if he'll ever leave to go back to Alabama. And he says it clearly, and I'll just go by his words. He says, look, I was at Alabama a total of 9 years as a player and as an assistant coach. I've been at Clemson for 17 years now. So his longevity is actually at Clemson, not Alabama. I'm not saying he doesn't love Alabama, but as far as his coaching career goes, Clemson is held closer to his heart than Alabama is.
Well, that's a good take. I'm surprised you said that. I don't see anything wrong with that assessment. But guys, I really appreciate y'all coming on here with us and talking about it. We're going to continue to crank out some videos, and we're going to get on out of here. For those who've been watching me for a while, y'all know what's coming next. Thanks for tuning in. Go Vols. Yes. Listen to this, Pigskin. Dabo better get ready and have your boys coached up, because he's going to be facing my Tennessee Volunteers this year in the college football playoffs. I promise you that.
Yes, sir.
Just make sure you beat them Gamecocks, man. Please.